Today's lesson is on multiplying and dividing fractions. Let's go over a few things you should remember before we actually start with some examples. Things to remember: that whole numbers are always written over 1. So if you're given a whole number of 6, write it as 6 over 1 before you begin your multiplication or your division. Also remember that your mixed numbers need to be changed to an improper fraction before you multiply or before you divide. Next, pay attention to your integer rules. Get the correct sign on your answer. Write all answers in simplest form. For us, that means that answers should not be left as an improper fraction. Go ahead and change them back to a mixed number. Make sure they're in simplest form. And last, sometimes it is easier to simplify before you multiply or divide. Let's move on to some examples. Our first example, let's go with one that's pretty simple. 1/2 times 7/8. All you do is multiply your numerators, multiply your denominators. 1 times 7 is 7. 2 times 8 is 16. Ask yourself, is my answer in simplest form? Meaning, are there any factors that the numerator or the denominator share other than 1? 7/16 is in simplest form, so you can move on. Next example, 1/3 times 3/5. Positive number times a negative number is how you need to look at that. You have one positive fraction, one negative fraction. Worry about that at the end. Just go ahead and take 1 times 3 to get 3 in your numerator. 3 times 5 is 15 to get 15 in your denominator. Both have a common factor of 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. And again, remember we are taking a positive times a negative, so get that negative sign on your final answer. Next, let's go ahead and multiply some mixed numbers. Again, when we have mixed numbers, we have to change them into improper fractions. So to remind you how to do that, 3 times 4 would be 12. 12 plus 3 would be 15. So 3 3/4 would be written as 15/4. 1 times 6 is 1, plus 1 is 7. So 7/6 is 1 1/6. Because I know that this is going to give me large numbers, if I would choose to multiply as they are, I want to go ahead and factor what I can first. 7 and 4, though, have no common factors beside 1. So you want to leave that as it is. But 15 and 6 have 3 as a common factor. 6 divided by 3 would give me a 2 in place of that 6. And 15 divided by 3 would let me replace that 15 as 5. So then I have 5/4 times 7 over 2, which would give me 35/8. 35/8 is an improper fraction, so let's change that back to a mixed number. That means it's 35 divided by 8. 8 will go into 35 4 times. 4 times 8 is 32, giving me 3 left over. So my final answer would be 4 3/8. If we go on to division, a couple things to remember when you divide fractions. You need to reciprocate your second fraction. That means flip it over. And then you need to change your division to multiplication. So if we have 1/2 divided by 3/4, last year said we keep first fraction the same, change division to multiplication, flip over that second fraction. So that would be written as a half times 4/3. And then you just follow your multiplication rules. 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 3 is 6, 4, 6, in simplest form is 2/3. Let's try another one. 7/8 divided by 1/4. Keep 7/8 the same. Change division to multiplication. Flip over 1/4. So it's 4/1. I'm going to cancel out first by simplifying. 4 and 8 are both divisible by 4, so I can change that to a 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So now I have 7/2 times 1/1. Answer 7/2. In simplest form is 3.5. A couple other examples might be if you have to divide by a whole number. Remember, whole numbers are written over 1. So this one would change to 1/6 times 1/3, which would give you an 18th. Also remember that if you have mixed numbers, you want to change those first into an improper fraction, then keep, change, and flip. Then 28/10 would be 2 8/10, which would be 2 4/5.